Good evening and welcome to the Channel Studios here in London with your international news around the world in 5. An inquiry into the Christchurch massacre has found a series of failures ahead of the 2019 attack, but concluded the tragedy was unpreventable. The inquiry was launched after white supremacist Brenton Tarrant killed 51 people at 2 mosques in March in 2019 in New Zealand. It found he had been able to accumulate a massive trove of weapons, with authorities failing to enforce proper checks on firearms licenses. It further found officials were overly focused on Islamist terrorism. The report includes a list of recommendations which the government in New Zealand said it would all accept, including establishing a new National Intelligence and Security Agency.
While the Commission made no findings that these issues would have stopped the attack, these were failings nonetheless. And for that, on behalf of the government, I apologise.
The UK's National Health Service has delivered its first shots of the Pfizer-BioNTech COVID-19 vaccine. 90-year-old Margaret Keener became the first person to receive a COVID jab anywhere in the world. It was the first of 800,000 doses of the vaccine that will be given in the coming weeks. About 70 hospitals nationwide are gearing up to deliver vaccines this week. Prime Minister Boris Johnson has thanked the NHS and all the scientists that made it possible. Meanwhile, a 90-minute phone call between Prime Minister Boris Johnson and the European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen failed to produce a breakthrough on a Brexit deal. Mr Johnson and Ms von der Leyen have agreed to hold a face-to-face meeting expected to happen on Wednesday or Friday. If an agreement is not reached and ratified by December the 31st, the UK and the EU could introduce import charges on each other's goods.
I think the situation at the moment is very tricky.
Prince Harry is suing the publisher of the Mail on Sunday over an article alleging that the Duke has not kept in contact with Royal Marines. The Duke of Sussex has launched a libel action against Associated Newspapers, publisher of the Mail on Sunday. The story, published in October, claimed that Prince Harry has failed to maintain contact with the Royal Marines after he formally stepped down from his royal duties in March. Liberians are set to vote in a referendum about shortening presidential terms from 6 to 5 years. President George Weah wants presidents and lower house politicians to serve 5 years instead of 6, and senators to serve 7 years instead of 9. Critics fear he could use the constitutional change to extend the number of terms that he serves. Mr Weah's office has denied that this was his intention. President-elect Joe Biden is expected to nominate retired General Lloyd J. Austin to be the next Secretary of Defense.
We also need to keep in mind that we are supporting and enabling this effort.
If confirmed by the Senate, General Austin would be the first African-American to lead the country's 1.3 million active duty troops. The general is known as a battlefield commander that has led the American military effort in Iraq. He is also the only African-American to have headed the US Central Command, the military's top combat command with responsibility for Iraq, Afghanistan, Yemen and Syria. China's foreign minister says Beijing is open to restart its relationship with the US after years of tensions. Wang Yi said in a video address at the US-China Business Council the two countries should strive to restart the dialogue and rebuild mutual trust in the next phase of Sino-US relations. The news comes after President Donald Trump's administration has announced sanctions against 14 Chinese officials over a national security law imposed on Hong Kong. All of them will be banned from travelling to the US along with their families, while any assets held in the US or in control of US persons will be blocked. The pilot who became the first person to break the sound barrier more than 70 years ago has died. Chuck Yeager went into the history books after his flight in the Bell X-1 experimental rocket plane went supersonic in 1947. He later broke several other speed and altitude records, making him the most decorated US pilot ever. He died at the age of 97. And finally, China and Nepal have agreed on how tall Mount Everest is after more than a decade of dispute and controversy. The world's highest peak, known as Sagarmatha in Nepal, stands at 8,848.86 metres, about 29,000 feet. The new height has been calculated using a combination of data received from 3 mechanisms: levelling instruments, a gravity meter and GPS. During Chinese President Xi Jinping's visit to Nepal last year, both countries agreed to jointly announce the new height, calling the peak an eternal symbol of the friendship between Nepal and China. And that's your international news around the world in 5. Now back to the Channel Studios in Lagos.